My grandma called me at midnight, her voice trembling. "Don't go home. Get somewhere safe." I asked why. She just whispered, "Please trust me." I listened. Right after, police cars surrounded my street. Imagine getting a call that shatters your entire world. A call from the one person you trust most, telling you your home, the one place you felt safe, is no longer safe, that it's dangerous. And then, just an hour later, watching it burn to the ground, knowing exactly who lit the match. My grandmother's voice, thin and trembling, ripped through the phone. "Don't go home, Terry. It's dangerous." I froze there in the parking lot, my heart slamming against my ribs. She never called me at that hour, never with that kind of raw fear. I tried to press her for details, for anything, but she just repeated, "Trust me. Go somewhere else now," before hanging up. A chill that had nothing to do with the icy Wisconsin air snaked down my spine. Following her cryptic warning, I drove to a friend's house nearby. Less than an hour later, the night exploded with the blaring wail of fire trucks and police sirens. From a distance, I stood there, utterly paralyzed, watching my house, the one I'd poured my sweat and soul into buying, the one filled with so many hard-won memories, engulfed in a monstrous, roaring inferno. I ran out to the street, barefoot on the freezing sidewalk, the cold biting at my skin but feeling nothing compared to the agony consuming me. One name echoed in my mind, a burning brand, Grayson. My volatile younger brother, the one I had finally refused to lend money to that very afternoon. No evidence, just a gut-wrenching certainty, a surge of pure, unadulterated anger. I sped to my parents' house where he still lived, freeloading off them. I had to confront him, but as always, they shielded him. My mother's voice was soft, yet it cut like glass. "Don't make a big deal out of this, Terry. Family comes first." But this time, something inside me snapped. This time I swore I wouldn't let it slide. "My name is Terry Henderson. I'm 35, an electrical engineer here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm not usually one to complain, but honestly, if you asked me, I'd tell you my life feels like a book with a truly terrible plot. I'm the eldest, the one who always had to shoulder the burdens, always had to sacrifice, but I was never, ever recognized. My family, or what passes for one, is a twisted knot of favoritism, injustice, and wounds that just never heal. My father, Stanley, a retired welder, is the patriarchal type. Always boasting about his glory days, but utterly blind when it came to his youngest son. To him, Grayson could burn down the world and still be the little boy who needed protection. My mother, Betty, used to be a nurse. Now she's a school nurse, lighter work, she says, so she can care for my grandmother. Mom is emotional, easily swayed by Dad and Grayson. Whenever I tried to talk about the unfairness, she'd just sigh, the same tired sigh I'd heard 1,000 times. "Grayson's still young. He needs more help than you." From childhood, he was spoiled rotten. I remember her buying him new shoes while I wore tattered ones, or Dad patting his shoulder for kicking a soccer ball while I worked part-time from age 16 to help the family. Grayson was always aggressive, selfish, and never, ever grateful. Every time he caused trouble, fights, debts, drunken outbursts, my parents found a way to blame anything but him. Circumstances, society, even me. Never him. The only person in that entire family who ever truly stood by me was my grandmother, Agnes. She's over 80, frail, and uses a wheelchair, but her mind? Sharp as a razor. She lives with my parents since my grandfather passed away. And though she never said it outright, I knew she saw the injustice I endured. On summer afternoons when I was a kid, she'd pull me onto her lap and tell stories about my grandfather, who she said I resembled. Hardworking, patient, always putting family first. "You're my pride," she'd say, though I never truly felt worthy. She was my lighthouse, the only steady light in my darkest days. My family lives in a middle-class Milwaukee neighborhood where everyone knows each other, but mostly minds their own business. My house, just a few miles from my parents', was small, but it was the result of years of grinding hard work. I loved that house, not just because it was mine, but because it was where I could finally escape my family's suffocating shadow, where I could simply be myself. But Grayson, fueled by pure jealousy and resentment, Destroyed it all in one horrifying night. The tension between us wasn't new. It was like a smoldering fire that had been burning since we were kids. I remembered having to give up toys, better food, even praise I deserved. When I graduated college with an engineering degree, Dad just nodded, "Good, but don't get cocky." But when Grayson dropped out, they comforted him. He'll find his own path. His path was gambling, drinking and calling me to beg for money. I tried. God, I swear I tried to be a good brother. I gave Grayson money countless times, knowing he'd just blow it at casinos or bars. I hoped one day he'd change, grow up, see me as something other than an enemy. But every single time I helped, he just took it for granted, even sneering, "Big brother's always got cash, huh?" I'm not rich. I just worked myself to the bone for a stable life. That afternoon, he showed up at my door. His face flushed, eyes wild, demanding a few thousand for some supposed new project. I knew his project, gambling debts, the same old cycle I'd foolishly funded before. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, Grayson, not this time." His face darkened. His lips curled into a snarl. "You'll regret this, Terry," he growled, before slamming the door and storming off. I was used to his temper, but there was something different in his eyes that day, like a cornered animal. I never imagined his threat would become a terrifying reality so quickly. That afternoon, the air was bitterly cold, the kind of late autumn Wisconsin chill that cut right through my thin jacket. I'd just gotten back from work, utterly exhausted after a long shift at the construction site, inspecting electrical systems for a new building. My small house at the end of a quiet street lined with vibrant red maple trees was my sanctuary of peace. But that day, that peace was shattered when Grayson showed up. He pounded on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it to find him standing there, his hoodie disheveled, hair a mess, and the faint, familiar smell of alcohol clinging to him. "Bro, lend me some cash. I've got a project," he said, his tone casual, as if he were asking for the time. I sighed and started to close the door, but he jammed his hand against it, shoving it open. "Don't act high and mighty, Terry. I need money now." "What kind of project needs money every time?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'd heard this line a dozen times. New project, big opportunity. But it always ended with Grayson disappearing for weeks, only to return buried in debt. He smirked, stepping inside, uninvited, and plopping onto my sofa as if it were his own house. "You don't need to know. Just give me the money." I stood there, my fists clenched, fighting the anger that was boiling inside me. The small room suddenly felt stifling. The mementos on my shelf, the photo of me and my grandfather fishing, the engineering degree I proudly hung up, they reminded me of everything I'd sacrificed to get here. And Grayson, my younger brother, who never appreciated anything, expected me to just keep handing him everything. "No, Grayson," I said firmly, "not this time. How many times have I helped you? What do you do with the money? Gambling? Booze? You think I'm a bank?" His face darkened. He shot to his feet, pointing a finger directly at my face. "Who do you think you are, Terry? The great big brother? You've got a house, a job, and I've got nothing. You don't help me. Don't blame me for what happens." His voice roared, echoing through my small house. I saw a neighbor across the street peek out, but I didn't care. I just stared into his eyes, searching for a trace of the brother I once loved, but all I found was pure, unadulterated resentment. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice cold, flat. Grayson growled, kicking the leg of my coffee table before storming out, the door slamming shut with a final violent thud behind him. I stood there, my heart pounding, feeling like I'd just survived a battle. But I didn't know the real battle was still ahead. After Grayson left, I sank onto the sofa, my hands trembling. I wasn't afraid of him, not exactly, but the way he looked at me sent a genuine chill down my spine. I knew he was volatile, knew he'd gotten into bar fights and been arrested for causing trouble. But setting my house on fire? I never thought he'd go that far. I reached for my phone to call Mom, but stopped. What would she say? Grayson's just struggling. Don't blame him. Dad would tell me, as the older brother, you need to be forgiving. I'd heard those words my whole life, and each time they made me feel smaller, less important in my own family. I decided not to call. Instead, I cracked open a beer and stared out the window. Night fell, the dim yellow streetlights illuminating the scattered maple leaves. I thought back to when we were kids, when Grayson and I used to play together. Once, I even gave him my brand new bike, even though I'd worked an extra month to buy it. He'd grinned, calling me the best big brother. But that smile was long gone, replaced by jealousy, resentment, and a bottomless pit of unreasonable demands. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my memories. It was Mom. I hesitated but answered. Terry, what did you do to make Grayson so upset? Her voice was full of reproach, as if I were the one causing trouble. He called me. Said, neighborhood. Black smoke billowed high, mingling with the fierce red glow of flames. A chilling dread shot down my spine as I realized it was my neighborhood. My house was on fire. I bolted out of Alan's house, barefoot on the icy sidewalk, running toward the blaze. The late autumn Milwaukee wind stung my face, but I felt nothing except raw fear and a rising tide of pure, molten anger. When I arrived, I stood frozen, paralyzed. The flames devoured my house with ferocious hunger. Black smoke swirled like a monstrous beast. The acrid stench of gasoline assaulted my nose, burning my eyes. Firefighters shouted, hoses sprayed torrents of water, but the fire refused to yield. The front door, where I'd stood greeting Grayson just that afternoon, was now nothing but a charred, warped frame buckling under the heat. Neighbors gathered, some recognizing me and whispering among themselves. Terry, thank God you weren't inside, one said softly, their voice tinged with pity. Mrs. Carter, the elderly woman next door, gripped my hand tightly, her eyes red and teary. I heard a strange noise, then saw the smoke. I called 911 right away, but the fire spread so fast. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. Don't go home, Terry, it's too dangerous. But if I hadn't listened to her, if I'd been inside, I shuddered, unable to finish the thought. I stood there, my heart tearing apart, watching the savage flames roar, consuming the house. The world I'd poured my sweat and tears into building. The photo of me and my grandfather by Lake Michigan. The wooden chair I'd painstakingly crafted piece by piece. The dog-eared engineering book I'd read countless times. All of it was vanishing into the black smoke and crimson flames. Each crackle, each piece of debris falling, felt like a knife stabbing into my chest. But the deepest pain wasn't the loss of the house. It was the raw, brutal betrayal inflicted by my own flesh and blood. I knew Grayson did this. I didn't need proof to feel his hatred in every flicker of the flames, as if the fire itself was him. Ruthless, unrelenting. The choking smell of gasoline mingled with his threat from earlier. You'll regret this, Terry. It all formed a horrifying picture, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. A firefighter, his face smeared with soot, grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. Hey, it's too dangerous. Stay back, he shouted, his voice cutting through the fire's roar. I wanted to scream, to charge into the inferno, to claw back even a single fragment of my memories from the flames' cruel grip. But the firefighter stood like a wall between me and my burning home. My body froze, but my heart raced and my eyes stung. Whether from the smoke or the agony tearing through my chest, I couldn't tell. The police cordoned off the area, their red and blue lights flashing in my eyes, mocking my helplessness, taunting a 35-year-old man watching his entire life turn to ash. I stumbled back to my car, my hands trembling as I held my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen but too afraid to dial. I wanted to call my grandmother, to scream that she'd saved me, that I was alive because of her. But my throat was so tight it felt like someone was strangling me. Tears welled up, hot and heavy, but I bit my lip, holding them back. I couldn't cry. My grandmother always said I was strong, but in this moment I was just a lost child, abandoned amidst the ruins of my own world. Anger, pain, and betrayal wrapped around me like the black smoke clinging to every breath I took. As the flames were temporarily brought under control, their fierce red glow gave way to thick, suffocating black smoke. Firefighters, drenched in sweat, waded through the smoldering debris, inspecting the charred remnants. The police had cordoned off the area, their red and blue lights flashing across the stunned faces of neighbors. I stood there, far from the ruins of my house, yet I could still feel the heat of the fire as if it were licking at my skin. A man in a reflective jacket, his face stern, approached me. He introduced himself as Tom, a fire investigator. His voice was low and professional, but his eyes were sharp, as if they could pierce through to my very soul. "You're the homeowner, right, Terry?" he asked, flipping open a small notebook, pen poised to write. I nodded, my mouth dry, my voice raspy. "Yes, that's me." Tom studied me, his gaze probing. "Did you leave the stove or any candles on?" I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, I didn't leave anything on." "Was anyone else in the house?" He pressed, his pen scratching across the paper. "I live alone," I replied, each word feeling like a stab to the chest. "I wasn't home tonight." Tom's brow furrowed as he jotted down more notes. "Not home? Why not?" I hesitated, my grandmother's image flashing in my mind, her trembling voice on the phone. "Don't go home, Terry. It's too dangerous." I took a deep breath and said, "My grandmother warned me not to go home. She said there was danger." I didn't dare say more. Didn't dare utter Grayson's name, though it burned in my mind. Suspecting something was one thing. Accusing without proof was another. I didn't want to look like a crazed man throwing blame around. Tom paused his writing, staring at me intently. "Warned you? Does anyone have a reason to want to harm you?" His question hit me like a punch to the heart. Grayson. His name echoed in my head. I wanted to scream it, but I just stood there, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm not sure," I said, my voice faltering, sounding like a coward. I knew the truth, but without evidence, I was just a man who'd lost everything, standing before the ashes of his life. Tom nodded, his eyes still sharp, as if he knew I was holding something back. "All right," he said. "We'll investigate. The smell of gasoline here is strong. This wasn't a natural fire. If you remember anything, call me." He handed me a business card and turned back to the scene where firefighters were still dousing stray embers in the wreckage. I stood there, watching the glimmers of light flicker in the ashes like mocking eyes. The stench of gasoline clung to every breath, confirming what I'd known all along. Grayson did this. Not an accident, not fate, but his hatred ignited with gasoline and rage. Yet I had no proof, only the pain and anger boiling inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. I returned to my car, my hands trembling as I gripped my phone. I needed to talk to my grandmother, to know exactly what she'd seen, what she'd heard. I dialed her number, my heart pounding, and she answered after the first ring. "Terry, are you okay?" Her voice was frail but filled with worry, as if she'd been waiting for this call all night. "I'm okay, thanks to you," I said, my voice choking, tears welling up again. "My house, it's gone, Grandma, everything. It's all gone." I heard her gasp as if she'd feared this, but hoped it wouldn't come true. "Grandma, how did you know? What did Grayson do?" I asked, my voice trembling, trying to stay calm, but my heart felt like it was breaking. She was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly, her voice steady. "Tonight I saw him at the house. He was muttering, cursing you, saying you'd pay. I was nearby, pretending to sleep, but I heard every word. Then he called his friends, said something about buying gasoline. I wasn't sure, but my gut... I couldn't let you be in danger, Terry." Her voice broke, as if she too were hurting from what was happening. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling as if the blood in my veins had stopped flowing. Gasoline. Grayson. The pieces fell into place, sharp as razors. "Thank you, Grandma," I said, my voice shaking, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "You saved me." I hung up, my hands trembling, my mind reeling. My grandmother had seen the truth. had saved me from Grayson's deadly wrath. But the cost was my entire world, my house, my memories, all reduced to ash. The anger inside me was no longer just a flame. It was a storm sweeping away all reason. I slammed my foot on the gas, speeding toward my parents' house where Grayson was still leeching off them. The familiar streets of Milwaukee blurred past the window, but they felt alien now, as if I no longer belonged here. The smell of gasoline still lingered in my nose, mingling with my grandmother's words. He talked about buying gasoline. I gripped the steering wheel, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to confront Grayson, to look into his eyes and force him to admit it. But deep down, I was afraid, not of him, but of my parents shielding him again, turning me into the family's villain. My parents' house was brightly lit, warm, a cruel contrast to the smoldering ruins of my life. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, my clothes still reeking of smoke, my eyes bloodshot from both rage and pain. Mom was in the living room, seated in an armchair with a cup of tea, and she jolted to her feet when she saw me. "Terry, what are you doing here in the middle of the night?" Her voice was frantic, her eyes scanning my disheveled appearance from my tousled hair to the smoke-stained jacket. Dad appeared from the hallway, his shirt wrinkled, his face stunned. "What's going on, Terry? Why do you look like this?" He stepped closer, his voice tense as if he could sense a storm brewing. I didn't answer, didn't stop. The fury guided me, and I stormed up the stairs, each step heavy with the weight of a lifetime of suppressed grievances. Grayson's room was at the end of the hallway, the room that used to be mine when I was a kid. I shoved the door open without knocking and saw him sprawled on the bed, phone in hand. The screen's glow illuminated his nonchalant face. "Did you pour gasoline and set my house on fire?" I growled, my hands clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. My voice was icy, reverberating in the small room, an accusation that couldn't be taken back. Grayson looked up, smirking, his eyes mocking, though I caught a fleeting glimmer of panic. "Got any proof?" "Don't slander me," he said, his tone calm. But I knew he was acting. He knew, and I knew. Mom rushed up the stairs, her face filled with alarm. "Terry, why are you yelling? What's going on?" She looked at me, then at Grayson, her eyes wavering as if she didn't want to believe something was wrong. Dad appeared right behind her, arms crossed, his face stern as always when I dared to challenge the family's harmony. "What's going on?" "My house burned to the ground, Mom." My voice trembled with rage. "Everything I built, everything I had, is nothing but ashes now. And this guy!" I pointed at Grayson, my hand shaking. "He did it. I know he did." Grayson shot up, tossing his phone onto the bed. "You're crazy, Terry. You've got no proof, and you're blaming me." He stepped forward face to face with me, his eyes bloodshot like a cornered animal. "You always think you're better than me, don't you? The perfect older brother? But what do you have, a house? Well, it's gone now." He sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, but I saw his hands tremble. He was scared. Mom stepped in, positioning herself between us, her hands gripping Grayson's shoulders as if he were a child needing protection. "Terry, calm down. You can't just accuse your brother like that. If the house burned, file an insurance claim. Don't make a big deal out of this. Our family's been through enough." Her voice faltered, as if she were trying to convince herself that everything could still be salvaged. "Insurance?" I almost laughed, but it was a bitter, anguished laugh. "Mom, I lost everything. Not just the house, but my entire life. Did you even ask if I'm okay? Do you even care? Or are you just worried about protecting your precious son, like always?" I pointed at Grayson, my voice breaking, no longer under control. "He burned my house, Mom. I know he did. Grandma heard him talking about buying gasoline." Dad stepped forward, his voice harsh, commanding, "That's enough, Terry. Stop causing trouble. Grayson is your brother. You have no proof, so don't make accusations. Family comes first. Don't let this tear us apart." He glared at me, his eyes cold as if I were the traitor, the one disrupting the family's peace. I stood there feeling like the whole world was against me. Not a single word of comfort, not a single question about how I was doing. Just the same old shielding, as always. But this time, I wouldn't stay silent. The anger, the pain, and years of being overlooked erupted inside me like the fire that had consumed my house. Family? What family, Dad? The family that always pushes me aside? The family that covers for a brother who burned down his own sibling's house? I've sacrificed everything for this family, but no one ever noticed. No one ever cared. I shouted, my voice breaking with pain. Grayson smirked, stepping closer. What do you know about sacrifice? All you do is show off, Terry. You had a house, a job, while I had nothing. You didn't help me, and this is the consequence you have to face. His words slipped out, an uncontrolled confession, and the room fell into a stunned, sickening silence. Mom covered her mouth, eyes wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. Grayson, you... she whispered, her voice breaking, as if her heart had just shattered. She stepped back, leaning against the wall, her hands trembling, her gaze shifting between me and Grayson. She wanted to deny it, to believe her precious son couldn't have done it. But Grayson's words had sliced through the veil of protection. No, it can't be, she mumbled, but her voice was weak, as if she were trying to convince herself. Dad stood frozen, his hands still on the table, his face rigid, his eyes wavering between anger and shock. Grayson, what did you just say? He asked, his voice low but trembling, as if he didn't want to believe it. He looked at me, then at Grayson, and for the first time I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Did you really do this? He asked, his voice breaking, no longer the commanding tone I was used to. Grayson realized he'd slipped, stepping back, breathing heavily. I didn't mean that, he stammered, his eyes wild, but no one believed him anymore. He bolted from the room, shoving Mom aside, and ran up the stairs, leaving the family in stunned silence. Grandma, from the corner of the table, looked at me with a steady gaze, her lips pressed tight as if to say, You did it. I stood there, my heart pounding. But not from anger, from a strange, bittersweet relief. The truth had come out, even if only partially. But the pain was still there, a raw, unhealed wound. I looked at Mom, watching her slump into a chair, sobbing into her hands. Terry, I didn't know. I didn't want to believe, she said, her voice choked, as if she were apologizing, but I wasn't sure what for. Grayson, or the years she'd overlooked me. Dad remained standing, but his shoulders slumped, his eyes empty. I spoke to him, my voice low but firm, tears streaming down my face. Dad, this family was broken the moment you and Mom chose Grayson, leaving me to stand in the ashes without a single word of comfort. I didn't want to destroy our family. I just want justice for myself. I turned to Grandma, seeing her nod slightly, her eyes filled with pride. I gathered the file and walked out of the house. Mom's voice called after me, but I didn't stop. I drove into the night, my heart heavy but also lighter. I had done it. I'd made Grayson reveal his true self, forced my parents to face the truth. But the pain didn't vanish. I thought of Mom, her tears, her shocked expression when Grayson slipped. I thought of Dad, the collapse in his eyes, no longer the authoritarian father commanding me. And I thought of Grayson, how he fled. But I knew he couldn't run forever. A few days later, Victor called me, his voice brimming with excitement. Terry, the police just reached out. They've opened an official investigation into Grayson for property destruction. The video, the witness statements, and especially his confession in front of your family have forced their hand. He was summoned for questioning this morning. I gripped the phone, my heart pounding. Really? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. What happens next? They'll dig deeper, Victor replied. There's a good chance he'll be charged. With the evidence we have, Grayson's facing serious legal consequences, but you need to brace yourself. These cases can drag on. I nodded, though Victor couldn't see. Thank you, Victor. I don't know how to repay you, he chuckled softly. Just live well, Terry. That's the best repayment. News about Grayson spread quickly through our small Milwaukee community. Neighbors who had always seen my parents as the model of a perfect middle-class family began to whisper. Stanley and Betty let their youngest son burn his brother's house. They always protected that kid. And now look at this. The murmurs were like a cold wind blowing through the facade my parents had built. They lost their standing. No longer the respected couple in the neighborhood. I heard Mom had taken a break from her job at the school, and Dad avoided the usual neighbor gatherings. They were forced to face the truth. Their blind favoritism had led to disaster. I didn't contact my parents after Thanksgiving. Mom's pleading texts, "Terry, come home. We need to talk," kept coming, but I didn't respond. I'd given them too many chances, sacrificed too many years only to be overlooked. This time I chose myself. I decided to cut ties with them, not out of anger, but because I needed space to heal. I needed to rebuild my life from the ashes, and I couldn't do that while being pulled back into the family's vortex. One afternoon, I visited Grandma. She was still at my parents' house, but I knew she was the one person I could never leave behind. I stepped into her room, the soft yellow light casting a glow on her face, now more aged, but still radiant with resilience. She took my hand, her frail fingers trembling but warm. "You did it, Terry," she said, her voice weak but filled with pride. "You're no longer the child who had to endure in silence." I leaned down, hugging her tightly. Tears streamed down my cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without you," I whispered, my voice choked. She patted my back like she did when I was a child and said, "You're stronger than you know. Terry, your grandpa would be so proud." Her words were a beacon, lighting the path ahead, though I knew it wouldn't be easy. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I bought a small house in the Milwaukee suburbs, modest but enough to call home. Each day I went to work, immersing myself in my job, finding peace again in numbers and wires. Cynthia and Alan became indispensable friends, always there, inviting me to dinner or baseball games, reminding me that I had a new family. Not of blood, but of people who truly cared. Grayson, according to Victor, was charged with property destruction. The trial was still ahead, but with the mounting evidence, I knew he couldn't escape the consequences. I didn't feel triumphant, only a bittersweet relief. Grayson had dug his own grave, and I had only done what I should have done long ago. Stood up. On a quiet night, I sat in my new home. The soft yellow light illuminated the photo of Grandma and Grandpa on the table like a beacon, shining on the scars in my heart. I thought about my journey from a child who endured, always striving to please the family, to a man brave enough to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Grandma's words echoed like a clear message. Sometimes the danger doesn't come from the world out there, but from those we love most, those we call family. But justice and dignity belong only to those who dare to stand up, to fight, even if it costs them their entire world.